plastic baked goods back there.
50 cents.
50 cents gets you a pair, or
3 for $1.
3 for $1.
Dollar gets you diabetes.
That's right. And some of the proceeds go towards the slam.
Yep.
So please, your money rewards poetry. We also got some books back there. I think Michael Catherwood, we got some. I think Jeff will have some later on. And then we do have some of the latest WSC Press books. And a sign-up sheet, which I want you to sign personally, okay? Just calling people out in the crowd. It's not working very well. Let's start. We're going to have David Drees come up, so I'm going to intro him first. David, you're here. David. All right. David Drees is an adjunct English instructor at Northeast Community College and Wayne State College in Northeast Nebraska. His work has been published in the Judascope, Dancing with Skeletons, Nebby, Green Mountain Review, and many, many others. His poetry has been twice runner-up and once recipient of the, what is that, Kingfic Prize from Academic of American Poets, a recent graduate of UNO MFA in Writing program, wonderful program. He resides in Wayne, Nebraska with his girlfriend. Self-indulgence in here. And his 4-year-old Jack Russell, Theo. How's Theo doing? I met Zach many moons ago. Were you a basketball player? I mean, he was just a mess. But then we brought him in and showed him the darkness of poetry and what he can really be. And look at him blossom now. So, without further ado, here is the infamous David Drees.
Everybody here? No. All right. We're reading from my thesis today, Penny on the Rail. And we're going to start with the poem that gave me the title for the thesis, thanks to Bill Trowbridge. It's called No Goodbyes at Grandma's. I sit smoking, sipping a 40 on the dissolving foundation of a rat poison factory, staring across the tracks down the street to her home, where they brought her today to die. They positioned her near the living room window, family sobs steaming from the sill through a tangled wind chime, wood screws, bolts, and engine scraps. My brother and I crafted it for her over a decade ago, and God damn it, she never would have stood for this pain in her home. So I'm not there, because she's not there. She's here, beside me, in her save for good clothes, laughing over a cigarette, waiting for the 5 o'clock freight to flatten the pennies we've placed on the rail. I'm going to end up with a pile of Post-it notes up here. All right. A little shorter one. This one's called At the Wake of the Widow Next Door. You collected lawn ornaments. At 9, it was the only thing I knew about you. My father called it a white trash hurricane, the night an Iowa wind scattered your gnomes, toads, and pinwheels to every yard in the neighborhood. The next morning, a hearse appeared outside. Will death always smell of hairspray and stale cigarettes? This is one of, probably half the collection of where I wrote poems about my father, on both sides of the father-son relationship. But this one here is called Commitment. As knuckles chafe in the damp leather mitt, I hear the hollow spring thud of the tennis ball off the wooden garage door. Infield practice, 300 reps a day, might still finish before sundown. Perched on the lawnmower, my father nurses an unashed Marlboro Light and a Diet Coke. He counts his calories and the grounders I let pass. 200 down, water break. I trade the tennis ball for a Spalding deep lace, close my eyes and practice the pitcher's grips. The ball's soiled red vessels linking to mine. I lie across the trunk of my father's '92 Caddy, Let the heat of its silver sheen sink into the soreness, shoulder to elbow. I flex to remember it's there. I can hear the fans in the stadiums I may never see. Hear the wooden bats, the rattling dugout fences, the click of my father's lighter. I open my eyes. From the edge of the driveway, he walks 60 paces, heel to toe, sits on a bucket behind a patch of shingles, slaps his fist into the jaws of a catcher's putt. I stand, dig my right foot into the mud along the edge of the driveway, and curl the sweat-rippled bill of my cap to my eyebrows. I curl it to tunnel vision, a pipeline over the dandelions and basset hound landmines, as I nibble my lip, blood in my wire braces, and sink knuckles into seams. They fit, they'll blister. I twist my neck over the left shoulder, check a runner by the pine tree. I guide the left leg in to toe, nervously next to the right. I load the back thigh. I load the ball in the center of my glove, center the glove in my chest, and come set, looking out towards the catcher's putt and the man on the 5-gallon bucket, toward the sunset. It nods, agreeing to hold close these forgotten reps, the half-mown lawn. All right. This one is called Closets. At 6, my father told me life is knowing when to lock the door, to balance and bury. Balance substance, bury a 20 in my nostril. Adderall stirs the pen, weed unwinds words, whiskey for the part of me still hiding. Behind the chute and dress shirts in my father's closet the night Uncle Terry died. I thirsted for a glimpse of moisture behind his bifocals. But like me, a part of him still hides in his father's closet. Behind the whipping belt, a Bible, his dead mother's Sunday dress, and Terry's graduation gown, dowling Catholic red. We all read of each other's deaths over coffee one morning, said nothing, and flipped to the funnies. I have a short one here that I will credit Armentrout for because I became obsessed with her for a good month or two. It's called The Shower's Running, but Nobody's in It. Stale menthol smoked cocktails with water vapor, and to a face on the mirror who sees me as a mirrored face facing him through his mirror, so I must pause. The slightest shift of this steam will surely dissolve this only camaraderie I've ever known. All right, this one started out funny. If you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly a humorous poet. But this is The Asian Beetle. Provides me a lot of entertainment because my girlfriend is terrified of them. This is called Ode to the Asian Beetle. He's never known poverty, pollen as possession, fences around water, never feared low-flying robins. His shell's never been searched for contraband, brandy, and box cutters, no jewelry or shoes to remove before flying. He's trying to reach us. Despite 6 arms, he's never known service work or assembly lines, shift change, time, or time. He's never known love and struggle woven together into a junkyard wind chime, hovering over a barrel fire. And if he could speak of it, he wouldn't. This is one of a few I'm going to read from the unfortunate part of my life that I spent at McDonald's. And this is called My Father Said Fear Stagnation. Closing time and I skim the fryers, wondering why my tie always manages to fall in at least once. Swing back onto my shirt and ensure I remember my place on the totem. A place sealed in grease, coated in the acid used to clean the grills. And if it were possible to feel sorrow for French fries, I'd feel it for this one, the runt pinned in the mesh, his life short and unmoving, dying, refried plaster on the corner of the basket. This one's called This Will Be Banned. I sit in my living room, staring down a muted television, reading O'Reilly by body language alone, syncing Fox News with Metallica for the ultimate propaganda film. I flip to Channel E for entertainment to hear about the Marlboro Man running off with Lady Gaga to see the next generation of media children. They'll be born with an extra finger to speed up the voting for American Idol. They'll be born without voice to speed up everything else. This one here is a poem about my girlfriend who I've known since I was about 12 years old, and we've only been together about 3 years. But the first time I ever met her was at a party. It's unfortunate when you're 12. But I was at a party, and this is what I saw her doing. And I knew I had a thing for her then. Years down the road, we crossed paths. This is called I Love Her Because I Cannot Hear the Music. Across the room, she hums to herself, plays with her hair, long enough for it to fight back, coil around her arms, and lift them, tentatively. She becomes a puppet, plucks a half-smoked Pall Mall from the ashtray, starts dancing barefoot with a radio the rest of the party has forgotten. If she bumps the volume knob, I fear she'll dissipate, so I must inhale her, exhale her, and hold. This one here I think is a story about every writer at some point or another, and the title is Lonely and Brooding, 4 a.m. There's a shadow of a woman on the wall, but there's no woman in my living room. She has only come to entice my own shadow into leaving me. He's torn, flickering back and forth from the wall to my side with each change of scene on the muted television. I feign disinterest in the love affair, though I know if she takes him, he'll be forgotten, discarded, tossed back to my doorstep, where he'll find me far too alone to answer the door. As a writer, I think it's important to experiment, play with a lot of stylistic things, and that's what this here is, a minimalist experiment. And it's also something I feel like most writers experience. It's called insomniac. While the rest of you sleep, he's lived and died twice. The pens burn truth in his flesh, left nothing but a stain. Eyes hover in the shower steam. He's made them his friends. One says, life's in the import of the second. One says, import is in the second life. He prefers listening to the menthol smoke, the way it thinks less and hisses. So we got about 4, and a couple of them are a little longer. This one here, I played with the idea of sobriety for a while. Complete sobriety. I just put everything down for about 6 months, and for about the first month I was miserable, trying to put the pen to the page. And then I had this sort of awakening. And this poem's called The Feeling. I know now, it's not wax tabs and mushroom caps. It's not reggae music, deep Zen prophecy, political rants over joints and half handles of watered down whiskey. Today, I find it under a flaring Jack Russell snout, bobbing in and out of the winter-flattened Nebraska prairie grass. I find it somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle of a rusted muffler, a mossy, deflated football, and the feathery bones of a premature robin. I inhabit gratitude's firm grip. I exist to decipher and harmonize the cackles of assorted birds, the purring strumline of locust breeding, fleeing to another cattail, and breeding again. I exist to unname them, unburden and redefine by the presence of their sound. I exist to breathe menthol smoke into green stubble, draw it up through the straggling snow. It hides from words and the flurried wings of the locust, prefers to only be visited from time to time. It waits for me to trickle in to the thrumming of paper wings. This one's called Last Night I Dreamed I Was Drowning a Boy. I grip his skull like handlebars on the first day without training wheels, an angry child trying to pop a balloon. I force him to the tub and hold him under, lost in the irony, how his desperate lashes make him look like he's trying to swim. Several times he submits, starts to sink, limp, but each time I stop him, smash his face into the porcelain until I hear breath again and start over. A dream is the only way we see a part of us die, and I will make this last. So I got all these Iowa phrases in here. I better get a Nebraska phrase in here, huh? This one's called Black Ice. I wrote this on the way back from residency, which is not safe when you're trying to write at night into a phone. This is called Black Ice. Snow flickers across asphalt on a still Nebraska highway like ashes from an unseen cigarette, brings with it a sense of being alone in the world. 70 miles from home, each drawn out like an old farmer's drag on an unfiltered camel. The whir of crossing a bridge is just enough conversation to keep me awake. I miss home, but not the bars, the late night rants, the Jack Daniels friendships, the crack of a properly thrusted pool cue, the crumpling of a loudmouth to the floor of the barn. Not the sour freshness of gin on frostbitten lips. I miss the stale, smoky aroma of my aging furniture, mold in the corner of my shower, microwaved cups of coffee. I miss the dog I never wanted in the first place, the woman brushing him. I light a joint, duck under the overpass between Fremont and a cornfield, but a part of me leaps free, hurdles the overpass. I slow, thinking, just maybe, I can still catch it on the other side. Maybe it just sought reprieve from me, the empty highway, the oncoming lights and roadkill. But there's a woman at the top of the ramp. She's pouring liquor down a sink while he sleeps on the bathroom floor. She runs her hands as if to sift the sand freckles of his back. She answers the door, says, he's staying home tonight. All right, I got two more here, and one of them is McDonald's poem. Any Wayne people from here? Anybody here from Wayne? There's a guy who hangs out at over at McDonald's, and his name's Chuck. And when I worked the night shift, I'd sit there and hang out with him all night and talk. And that's what I titled this poem. It's called Chuck and the Golden Arches. A pot of McDonald's coffee takes 2.5 minutes to brew. I count seconds, slide the fresh tray of quarter pounders into the heating cabinet, and wave the grill guy back in from his smoke break. I grab 2 rolls of each size cold cut from dry stock on my way back to the front counter. Chuck's waiting, pocket change in hand. Senior coffee in the Omaha World Herald. At 53 cents a cup, it's cheaper to read his paper in a booth, between order calls, slamming drive-through windows, and gurgling fryers. He guides a pair of bifocals down the bridge of his nose, squints through the sports section. Royals won in extras. Young, a blooper shy of a no-hitter. On the front page, there's a photo of a Syrian child, washed up, face down on a beach, under the headline, Financial Burden of Refugees. At 25, I rarely make it deeper than these pages. I believe the world is soiled as sweat drops on a grill, but Chuck knows. He knows we sweat dew into sand on chalked diamonds. And tonight, he tells me the Royals will win the series, an idea ridiculous as dead children in black and white print. I laugh, careful to tilt my breath away from the booth. I tap the front page. Spent less to help them than the Yanks did on A-Rod. Chuck frowns, tells me I should watch more baseball. I shrug, check lobby trashes on the way back to the counter. I scrub ketchup fingerprints from plastic trays, pick soggy lettuce from the grooves. I watch Chuck carefully pen lines in the microscopic stats section. I wonder how many hours of overtime it'd take to send him to a home game. I wonder if it'd ruin it for him. I wonder if the Syrian child knew he was going to die, floating in the Mediterranean alone. Maybe it was quick. Maybe he held his breath through the final inning, fought to the last pitch. Maybe Chuck knows more of these things. He knows the score of the next World Series. He told me. He told me the rest of the paper's recyclable. This is the last poem I'll read today. It's another father poem. I was very lucky to have my father be the one to teach me how to drive. Because as angry as he'd get, he stayed very silent. He'd smoke about 2 packs of cigarettes in about 2 hours. But he would stay completely silent almost the entire time we drove. And this is called Always Keep an Eye on the Side Mirror. I learned how to drive on this highway, a weaving, unkept mess of roadkill and deer-riddled ditches. My father believed in crash courses, so I clenched the wheel of his '92 Cadillac as hard as he pinched the cigarette in his stubbled lips. He never panicked. He hung one arm out the passenger window and filled the ashtray. He lit each cigarette with the butt of the last, dragged patience through a cotton filter. Sometimes he'd lean across to check the speedometer. There's a reason they call it a limit, Zachary. Each lesson more scolding and blunt than the last. I'd ease up on the gas, wait for him to complain about the old people passing us. We hit a possum about a mile from here. Patches of fur peppered for miles, my own stamp firmly pressed into the pavement. I was upset as I scrubbed the blood from the bumper in the next town. My father frowned. He didn't understand. He didn't ask, but he didn't needle it either. He paid for the gas, pulled a lighter from his shirt pocket, and tossed me the keys. On the way home, I almost ran over a man in a one-street town with the type of bar that's crowded at 3 on a Saturday afternoon. He stumbled into the street, but with a swift push of my father's left hand, we slid to an awkward halt at the curb. He didn't even drop his cigarette, just slammed the horn until the man slipped on the ice. He laughed and said not to tell my mother. I laughed with him, and I forgot about the possum. He turned off the talk radio, lit another cigarette, hung his arm back out the window. He stared out, let his eyes lull to the ripple of barbed wire fences at 50 miles an hour. I took my eyes off the road, breaking a rule, caught his proud grin in the glare of the passenger side mirror. I stored it there. A decade later, I mute the talk radio, reach to the dashboard, and turn the knob from defrost to the figure with the 3 accusing white arrows. I think of the possum, stretched out for miles, worn into the asphalt. I think of the day I crash the caddy of everything disintegrating between yellow lines. I peek into the passenger side mirror. I think I can make out a little of my father. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was fantastic. I had a different experience with a possum once, though. It was more of a wrestling match. At least I think it was a possum. Possum, he put up a pretty good fight, you know. And I didn't want him to feel bad. Didn't want to beat him too soon. All right, I forgot to mention Poetry Slam 38 is tonight. That is at 7 o'clock at the Max Bar and Grill. It's free to the public. If you want a seat, I recommend coming down a little earlier. It will fill up fast. If you want to do a slam, you need to bring 4 original poems and $5 to register. And the registration starts at 6 o'clock. So bring some poems, and we'll have a good time. Up next, we got Michael Catherwood. I think I'll read his bio here. My first experience with Michael is in JV's class. I can't remember. I think it was something you had about. We were doing book reviews or something over books, and it was a bunch of Backwaters books just in a box, and you just kind of grabbed whatever. And I pulled out Dare. I had no idea who the hell you were, and it ended up I enjoyed it quite a lot. So it's kind of strange that here I am now getting to do this. So it's kind of fantastic. Michael Catherwood's first book was Dare by the Backwaters Press. His second book, If You Turn Around Quickly, which is back there, If You Turn Around Quickly, back there, is from Main Street Rag. His third book, Projector, is forthcoming from Stephen F. Austin University Press. His poems have recently appeared in Bluestem, Louisiana Literature Measure, the Minnesota Review, New Plains Review, the Common Red River Review, and Galway Review, and other journals. He has taught creative writing at the University of Arkansas, University of Nebraska at Omaha, and Creighton University. He has been an associate editor at Plainsongs since 1995, where he writes essays. He's also an editor at the Backwaters Press. I'm happy to have him here. Please put your hands together for Michael Catherwood.
Thank you. Good stuff, David. I got too much stuff up here. I can see that right away. David and I were talking a little bit before the reading, and it turns out one of my friends is one of his mentors or committee members on his thesis, and I recently wrote this poem. Friend with Steve Langan, and recently wrote this poem. It's kind of self-explanatory. This is back when Steve and I used to celebrate. We no longer celebrate in the ways we used to. Anyway, this is kind of explains. Stephen Langan text for sale pics of the Forgot Store bar where we used to drink 25 years ago. So that's a title. And it was. There were, pictures of this bar we used to go to. It's all cleaned up. There's no one in it. It's for sale. Hey, where did we go? In the staged pictures of the bar, stools are empty, and stick-on bar mirrors are clean and rosy with neon. I can hear the jukebox scratch out Kitty Wells and R.E.M., losing my religion right into making believe. Pool balls punctuate the lo-fi noise. Steve says, the Omaha res gents know how to pick 'em. There we are out back in the gravel lot in a Pontiac station wagon to smoke a twist with the Omaha crew. The rear end of their car inches from the ground, their eyes red as blood, the smoke, a hat we wear. On Sunday morning, the Bagat store is the only bar open this side of the Missouri, while the stoic bartender ignores the chaos. We're almost dangerous, and slowly wind down the way a quarter wobbles on the bar. Used to be a contingent of people on Sundays would come down to that bar from the Omaha reservation because it's one of the few bars open. It was open at 6 in the morning. And a couple of times Steve and I were there waiting for him to open. So we're talking hardcore back in those days. But anyway, that was kind of a found poem, you know. It's one of those deals. This next poem is a found poem too, I'd say. This past summer, we were in Pacatola in family vacation in South Dakota, and at the ranger house or the ranger house, there was a what I would call like a bad painting of a biker on a motorcycle with a ghost riding a motorcycle next to him. And so there was this kind of a long explanation about how he missed his former writer friend brother, and it was just like this really bad poetry, you know. And I just jotted down on my phone, write your bad poem. And so this is it. My bad poem, draft. Here it is, centered, almost concrete. I can make a butterfly, a puppy/kitty image. I could go dark and emotional, break every line at a preposition. My cliches, though, would be strong, dredged up bone fragments at midnight, wrapped in starlight, where I place dimes on a dead man's sunken eyes. Maybe I would call them peepers in my bad poem. The poem would spiral with candy cotton clouds and abstractions. They'd scroll across the Armageddon skies filled with gray bearded adjectives. I would, of course, connect it all to God, or capitalized evil, or mama. Again, here it is, deep in, evening, like Germany or Paducah, nails on a blackboard. The silverfish in cupboards would be provoked. It was kind of a lesson in what not to do. I had a professor at Arkansas, Bill Harrison, who taught creative writing, and his syllabus was one page. And on the page were 3 or 4 like Hallmark poems, and he'd bring that in and he says, "Don't write this shit." And then it's like, you know, he didn't like poets anyway, you know, and he was a fiction writer, but he had to teach it. And actually, we became friends. So this is another kind of tongue-in-cheek poem. This one's called "The Bully Poet School." We have decided to take our posy outside and write witty shit about trash cans. Mix in synesthesia. Collard greens and cabbages are such quiet colors. With earthy fingernails, we wring clouds, drink buckets of sticky beer, and fill playgrounds knee-deep with peanut shells. Our cars whip past fence posts at the speed of, forget it. We have demands. Include some danger in your poems. Another request, mute those ribbons of light, forlorn those shadows, paint a few speckles of something other than what we have listed here. Self, parchment, other self, your mom and dad, shiny keys, lovers, shiny lovers, sky, moon, sky. Follow us. We've dumped the egotistical pose, locked up our Sunday ruminations, the old confessional light stuck on. We're tired of mushroom hunts cute puppy dog musing, contrite pap, all those indoor trampolines are finally indoor trampolines. They're oh so predictable, flips and spins. Okay. This next poem's a little more serious. This poem is old. This poem was originally a screenplay I wrote in undergrad, and then became an essay, and then I kind of tucked it away. And then when I was in grad school, I brought it in. There was Michael Heffernan made us write this, like 400 lines of blank verse. It was like it's due in 2 weeks. And so I had this idea for the poem that had been based on the essay. So I started in on it, and then I got to work with this poem with Jack Gilbert for a little while. He was in Arkansas with Linda Gregg. He was the secondary poet, ironically. Anyway, it was when he wrote, if you ever get the chance to read it, The Great Fires. And him and Jack Gilbert and I kind of hit it off. He was kind of working class guy. Anyway, this poem's called Yellow Thunder. On Old Highway 20, the rides were rare. Yellow Thunder's dense eyes followed from foot to hill the split that broke along the bank of clouds where trucks blew past and excited the dust and grass. In Yellow Thunder, the sky huddled its light like a fallen bird. This July 4th, he hitched a morning ride from a local farmer who said a few words about corn hybrids. The fields twisted like water. 2. Rain's Plenty was off last spring, a hit and run. Outside of Gordon, the farmer let him out. The midday sun clothed the sand hills in blankets of shadows where from the south Mother Rock watched, measured and sang from the bright intersections above. There were times when ranches and lonesome cottonwood spoke more than the past of blood nights, and Yellow Thunder saw flashes from eagles' nests, while the dark flack of clouds splintered overheads. 3. In the Badlands, Yellow Thunder wandered and broke through where he rose in the soft hills blown wild with sand, and when storms leaned in and pitched cool rain, he danced in the pulse of lightning. But as the yellow sky cracked and filled the air, he returned to land stitched with fences and asphalt. Chaos ran like light. 4. Yellow Thunder's job at the local hardware was tossing 150-pound bags of decalb seed into old pickup beds. Today he was paid enough cash to make the trip worth it. He made his way through the commotion of VFW Day beer tents and booths. As he slowly passed post 1063, the door broke open and hands dragged him inside. The dark revolved with smoke and loud whoops. His body pitched from chair to table. A web of hands and shadows flashed from all directions. Clumps of his hair scattered the floor. He felt his clothes rip. "Dance, engine," yelled the man in the red t-shirt. A gun shone from the man's bib overalls while the bartender handed red t-shirt a bottle. "Drink," he said. "They love firewater. Either dance or take your chances out back." 5. The sand hills blackened where white tails scattered. Yellow Thunder's clothes were torn off. Then hands dropped him on a table. "A rain dance," red t-shirt laughed. "The sky's been dry for a month." Cigarettes burned into his ankles and legs. The sky opened and screamed across the hills. Yellow Thunder was back in the fields, back in the Badlands where the cool earth became his face. The sky was the same sky. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story of Yellow Thunder. I know Jamie is. And it was one of those things, when I first started researching that poem, it was on microfiche. Yeah. And the closer it was like, it's kind of like the George Orwell said, I believe it was in Shooting an Elephant, the closer you got to a story, the less you understood it. And it was kind of one of those things. The facts kept changing depending on what I could find. And it was kind of, you know, there's some controversy too about a white man writing about Native Americans, you know, and I can understand that. But it was kind of one of those things where I felt like, I'll just tell the story. There's plenty of books about it and so forth. There might even be movies. Anyway, directions. A, move over the earth to keep from speaking, to stand where the world pivots, to look through spaces and branches where sun falls like syrup, where choirs disappear in the evening traffic, where cars howl and fade in lighted song. Nothing precise, but music lifting into the air, liquid as hammers, impossible shifts and perspectives. B, you already know what to do, but just in case, listen to cardinals paint across green lawns, hear the smell of earthworms alive on the driveway, the song of decomposing leaves. C, believe for a moment the sky is clear, so crisp you can see into your first days, the unnamed and happy moments of your long life ahead, where weather never mattered. Perhaps galaxies pulsed, where you could not name the world, but brilliance swam closely, lived in casual dust, and in wordless breezes outside windows, where the world moved for you in silence. Like David, I have a lot of poems about my father and family members, and this is one. It has my brother and my father in it. This one's titled Paul Robertson's Backyard, 1967. Dad and Paul were building a 3-window 36 Ford coupe. It's a flathead V8 with a floor shift, Paul said. The tan velvet seats smelled like mothballs and paint thinner. My brother Mark grabbed the steering wheel, big as the sun, then gripped the stick and slammed the gears. He drag raced the elm-lined boulevards of Council Bluffs, pushed on the brakes through hairpin turns. Mario Andretti could not have held those curves. The brake pedal is like pushing on a pillow, Mark said. Then the pedal punched back from the floor. Boom. Outside, I handed Dad and Paul wrenches, beers, old rags Mom gave us. Mark drove and drove. 15 years later, Mark called Dad from 3 states away, wondering how he got there, asking for directions home. When he got home, we put him in the hospital, watched him disappear into the mystery of electrical sockets and into the maze of schizophrenia. Here's a poem, short poem, a lyrical piece called The Atom. I've had these thoughts, how sunlight feeds dust on Venetian blinds, how anarchy divides the train, departs the depot. Rails and landscapes rush from my body, become a fatigue that burns like an engine, an organized chaos, a brief distortion. This is a poem that started off about my grandfather, then my grandfather disappeared from the poem. I'm not sure how that worked. I think he ended up in another poem. Things kind of gravitate sometimes, you know. Sometimes you have to trust things, right? They go where they're supposed to be. That sounds kind of flaky, doesn't it? But it's kind of true, I think, you know, there's stuff that worked underneath that you gotta allow to bubble up sometimes. This one's called Music. Along the deep Missouri banks, I find gray, strangled grass where the high water left its hands. The crows in the distant trees gather like dark smoke, then rise to the sun. The sun smiles at my feet and climbs this same riverbank. Alone in a current, a gar snakes along the bank where a shadow waits like breath against a cool pane of glass. Page number. This next poem is kind of a narrative poem. It's called A Poem About $50. Harry sits on his bed in the Chieftain Hotel in Denver as heat bangs in the radiator. Outside, the cold air breaks and breathes through cracks along the window frame. The sky knits grays and whites. Harry drags on a cigarette and studies the buildings and streets. Then he counts his money, $50, enough to leave town. The stairs wheeze and crack in the Chieftain. Walls crumble. The maid sports a pound of rouge. The maid's important. Rain and sleet slash the city while Harry considers the window. Two faces blind to its center, one a brute, the other conscience. Harry plans to leave town tomorrow, but he has hours to kill. He bounces a cough off the wall, scribbles faces on the fogged glass. The teeth become fence posts. He laughs as he clears the portraits with his sleeve. Finally, he twists a beer. Harry begins a letter. Dear brother, you hold grudges like dogma. I'm an asterisk after a 1,000-page novel. Will be in town by week's end, Harry. The storm slants outside the window as Harry and the maid sit in the lounge drinking the 50 down. Harry wishes he hadn't sent the letter. Later, the stairs are torture. This next one, is called Balloons, Drinks at the Frontier Tavern. Couple of little motif going on here, taverns, kind of archetypal characters. Balloons is kind of one of those. Balloons is a clown. Balloons, Drinks at the Frontier Tavern. As the Florence Days parade marched down 30th, Balloons, with his jaw half gone and fleshy, sat in the frontier slugging one Manhattan after another, the clink of ice announcing survival. The bartender stared at his head. The world of chemo, Balloons replied, then twisted balloons into helicopters and giraffes, while paraders marched their way into the frontier. Shriners double-parked tiny Mustangs in the back alley, and Mayor O'Neill bought Falstaff for the regulars. Balloons pulled Idaho Reds from his pockets, stabbed them angry with cocktail straws. A tuber pincushion, he said, pointing. Kids found their way in. Balloons was there, they heard. In '54, I began the Florence Days parade under a canopy of trees, started from Miller Park, led the police cars. I rained candy on those kids. The parade was 5 city blocks long then. Dutch elm hadn't rotted the trees. And he sat in the corner, plucking quarters from children's ears, bending straws into stickmen, squeaking balloons into halos. And one more. This is the title poem of my next book. It's called Projector. There's really no setup here. It's pretty straightforward. When my mother died, one of the things I had to do was clean up the house. And my dad was a 8mm film nut. And so there's just boxes and boxes of 8mm film in the basement, and which is now in my basement. I need to do something with that stuff. Probably put it together. Projector. The 59 Dodge is parked in the driveway where its tail fins stab the air. Mirrors gray with gravel roads. Here our lives are, jumping and crooked against the stucco. Dad's practice swing, a slow shadow that folds across a burned out lawn. 8 months pregnant, Mom springs from the Ford Fairlane wagon embarrassed. Close up, her bright lipstick disappears into the house. There's the old garage before it collapsed, its hinged doors cockeyed and wide open. The stucco is in chunks under the window where a rusted push mower points to the fence. The film cuts to Aunt Ethel in her mid-40s, the palm of her hand dramatic for the camera. Now the picture pans by the cherry tree, then across the same peonies that still madly bloom each May. Great-grandmother Yankovich squints and stares into noon light. No smile, her arms folded, her Easter hat spun in satin and glitter. Then the film turns white and blinding.
All right, thank you, Michael. That was fantastic. And David, you were okay too. Let's put your hands together. We're going to just take about a 5-minute break or something. We have a 2 o'clock reading here, so stick around. But there's books back there, check them out, and there's lots of baked goodies back there that you can purchase. All right, thank you. And writing educator. She works as a teacher, artist, in youth triage in prisons, and as a college writing center consultant. Emily is developing a program featuring writing curriculum adaptation to traumatic stressed populations for the nonprofit, the Nebraska Writers Collective. For 4 years, she has facilitated a community writing group at Youth Emergency Services, an organization fighting youth homelessness in the Omaha metro area. And in 2016, was given the Champion of Youth Award for advocacy. Emily holds an MFA from the University of Nebraska. Let's see here, I'm losing my spot. Her poetry and nonfiction has appeared or are forthcoming in such kick-ass journals as the World Review, Salamander, Alligator, Juniper, Skid Row, Penthouse, and Green Mountain Review. Her current book project is a memoir and essays. Please help me welcome Emily Borgmann.
Thanks, Chad. Oh, wait, let's see if I can get this. Somebody in the back. Somebody hold your hand up. Yeah, good, all right. Okay. So, I'm from around here. I'm from Hoskins. You guys know Hoskins? Yeah, I haven't been back in a while, so I'm really excited. Happy to be here. And a lot of you are students, yes, right? Not course. Yeah, and you're going to be at the slam tonight because we're judging, all of us. Yeah, I hope you are. So, I had a teacher, Miles Wagner, who got me through undergrad. I mean, he's the reason I finished college. And he always said to me that it's really good to be from a small town because you know about characters and stories that people that have these kind of cityscape poems don't know about. Have interesting characters like we heard from Drees and Catherwood and everyone. So I'm excited with that in mind when I read this first poem. It's called Last Words, and it's from probably the closest to a collection I have. I haven't sent it out yet, maybe I will. That is called Complications of Breathing. So that line's in here. Last words. Breathing was so often difficult. I needed to work so hard at that. And now it's the last thing you'll watch leave me, my breath. So please, be glad when that final exhale comes. Oh, how I've had to study this breath, an automatic act this world complicates. If it were a ribbon threading between my ribs, or fog hovering above my open mouth every morning, the single thing you pull toward you and give away, what can't be taken, you can only give it. You're broke, naked, starving, alone, you still give it, alive as ever. So listen with me, I'm almost a wind chime. Like Chad said, I teach in the community. I have the opportunity to serve prison writers in several facilities in Nebraska. And this is one of the pieces that I worked on for them. It's called Hymn Through. Your mouth eats the words to the song you play, whether the day is worth singing or not. Say it's clear when you have no anchor. Talk to the sky. It's held the swing and you in it, trying to go over. It holds. This is the night you can't get free. Every morning you must tell your own name. These are the notes your voice windmills for you. So lie to the cellar you keep beneath you for secrets. Whatever you've done, you're standing on top of it. Thank you. Okay, as Catherwood said, moms, dads, poems about that, you should write them or you shouldn't, either way. I'm going to read a poem about my dad. My dad makes knives, or he did when he had more time. It's called My Father Gave Birth to Knives. If it was the way his hands fed a plain, rusted file to a sharpening stone, then an aged belt sander, how he let the sander eat the stone like art projects I didn't finish, until a blade started to show, the way sand covers a seashell and you know it's ridge. Then a wave leaves it alone and you can see the whole thing. How he gave birth to knives with the most starry farmer's boot toe curve at the ends, and then decided from which materials to fashion the handle. If it isn't my prayer for him answered, seeing he made knives, and that I knew sure than God he'd never heard anything unless it killed me, and that even then, he'd break it gently. I say only this verse for the Father, my Father. So I don't know if all your wonderful teachers here like Chad and Drees, and if they tell you not to write long poems sometimes, because they're kind of hard to publish. I've been told that, but here's the thing. This is a poem about my mother. My mother is not here today. She's just getting out of the hospital, but she's had some health stuff, like lots of people. And so this is about a 5-minute poem. Looking around to see if everybody's awake. See if we can make it through it, all right, together. If it's a bad idea, tell me tonight. That's slam. But I figure I can give my mom 5 minutes. You know, she's put up with a lot from me. So, all right. This is called Amputation Suite, or Why Jesus Wept. You go to your mother as the first part of her body is buried. No, as the first part of her body is taken, or maybe it frees her. You go and wonder how far away you've really moved. Sometimes, a flock of your childhood neighbors die at once, separated by walls in the same hospital where they were born. There is a kind of person who finds one home in life, never wanders from that solid house, that rich soil. Then the pastor comes to usher them from this riot murky night. He comes to read Bible verses. Then your mother's pastor comes to ask about the amputation. In a flash, you are so much older. You know the name of your mother's God, or what yours once was, which is a little like knowing someone's maiden name in this thimble small town. and which is a lot, like wanting her God to tidal wave her body with the force required to let her walk again. Then, your mother's pastor asks if he can read some Bible verses. She nods, then the pastor reads from the book of John. He reads the shortest verse the Bible holds, and he tells your mother why Jesus wept. The pastor says, so Jesus was going to raise Lazarus up in maybe like 30 minutes Bible time, but that he saw Mary weep, saw she was upset, mad he wasn't saving her brother. He says, Jesus wept because Mary thought she was losing Lazarus. He wept at the pain she held, even though he intended to undo it. His spirit was rough, like your mother's hands used to be. Why Jesus wept doesn't matter to you until today. Jesus is not your Lord God Savior. Jesus is your mother's God, and you're here for her. It's a little like going to a wedding when you hate weddings because your best friend's ex-boyfriend is getting married and someone needs a date to prove they're okay. So you, your sister, your father, your mother are listening together to the Jesus story. To the Lazarus, your mother's pastor says God is almighty, that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And instead of wanting to throw the pastor's Bible in the toxic waste bin, where things like your mother's foot now live, you want God to give to her, your mother. You want Jesus to see you weep in the family lounge, hospital quiet, making a poem of this day, the day your mother lost her foot, the way you make a poem of everything, because that's your God. And you want this big deal redeemer of all the fools, of all the sinners, and of all terrible daughters, and of mothers who hold their 20-year-old daughter's hand, this son of a virgin. You want suddenly so much for this terrible Bible time 30 minutes to be passed, for your mother to walk you down the aisle at your wedding. You stop giving up. You hold your body stronger today. Set your shoulders back. Promise God that you'll take good care. You want it to be a decision for her, for your mother to come away from home, back out to the world of casinos and road trips, and every good thing you wish for late at night. She took you there. She ordered pizza at midnight, and she taught you to read so early. You want your mother to come back to you like you drove back home to her today. You've ruined so many things, and one of them may be your own body. You want her to be able to learn to walk again, to build the muscles, thick, not ropey, like farm folks have here, not for show, but for use. You want her 2 feet on the ground, one, her prosthesis, a better trick than water into wine. You want to come back from 34 years of reckless spilling over your body's borders, from reckless spilling of your own saving. Because you have laid in so many hospital beds too. You collected your admission bracelets for a year once, until there were too many and you got bored keeping track of emergencies. And the floor tiles where ghosts walk hospital halls, where you wandered like a ghost or a sinner, like someone untethered from this world. You have to stop dying to start living in the rest of your body. You want this for your mother too, but you can't give it to her any more than she can hand it to you. You want the both of you to want so hard, to get sick on the fullness of desire for bodies so light they almost untether, for the wildness you learned from her. You and your mother stopped drinking now. You and your mother both grew older a while. You and your mother are too familiar with hospitals and too strange to each other. This is the time that everyone is dying in little pockets of a large hive. You are living as much as you are dying every second. This is true. What else are you going to do with your mother's foot but thank your mother's God for calling it home? What else are you going to do but stop crying? because you stopped trying to tell your mother exactly who you are, but you kept wanting her to know. You see now that your mother might want to know you more than you risk telling her. And did you ever consider how this would go if you concentrated on getting to know exactly who your mother is? Your safe passage into this world? Thanks. You guys are awake. You were awake. That worked. All right. Or I mean, it was okay at least. Okay. So I'm going to read another poem that I wrote for the prison writers I serve. This is just one of those. I got inspired by someone, Ann Stevenson. You guys should check her out. She doesn't get read enough. Poem beginning with a line by Ann Stevenson. When we belong to the world, we become what we are. With the whole of my body, its aching fins, its murderous thirst, the ship of my ribs so often pinned under slouch, I am sure that I want to keep myself. Though I have drunk and dried and feasted on shame, though my wounds are clean and I write letters to bee stings, this is the only carousel spine I am hired to turn aflame and glow. In the blue-tiled fountain, my face waves over pennies unthumbed, from those who knew it best to count out hope a single cent at a time. Mine, the only cave mouth, will poison the sun for looking in. Still, it is morning this morning, it is morning, just take it. I am turning back, then my lungs are full. I stumble, born of smoke, to whatever gasping field will have me. Tuck in the razor's silver arms with their fire alarms clear. In this world, the bridge over must burst from my tongue. In these waters, the oars flutter down from lightning, and I will strike my own God to go on. Thank you guys. I'm gonna look at the time here. All right. Can skip that one. So, this is the thing. So I work in the community, and something that I say every time I teach is, the person in the room that's the most different from you is the person you're going to learn the most from. And I've always found that to be true. So I didn't know that I would ever stand up here and get to read at Wayne State, college my parents wanted me to go to. But I probably should have. I mean, look, this is great. So anyway, I sometimes try to write things for what I needed to hear when I was a young kid and when I was a teenager writing poetry. And so I didn't really know for sure that the way I was existed, the way I was. So I'm going to read a queer sex poem for you guys. And I hope that you're all enjoying each other's bodies, enjoying yourselves, because you're in college. So I hope with consent and condoms, yes, but I hope you're doing it. So I'm going to read this poem, and it's called Call for Trial by Fire. Take a drink first with all this fire talk. All right. Call for trial by fire. Burn as altar to yourself. As who else could light you? Who else could spine the monument? If you find this masturbatory, measure how much you learned when you learned yourself. To remember, to honor, praise be and bless this womb. Let these verbs satin your hand, your cheek. Aren't we all asking for visitation of hands? For God fingering our open sign? Burn as altar for the word you name the crop gathering of you inside another. You astride another, smoke brushed, like fire's lips would breath ear gush. Like standing in a sunflower field while it snows and glad glitters, even as first blood swell leaf brings evening. You are the seasons, frenzied with shouldering into your vision of them. All at once, you're standing in snow, sun, leaf, then rain like a famine's end upon your face. If you can outstar voices that would tear you into pieces like pronoun, like pretty, not pretty, like this way or that. If you're able, your two hands cupped behind two ears, welcoming sound, which looks the same as if you covered your ears from gallop and grumble. You must know, by now, burn your own house down so you're standing. Thanks. All right. Oh gosh, these pages. I brought so many poems, so I'm just going to read a couple more. I'm deciding right now. Let's see. Okay, Steve Langan has come up in this room. I feel like things repeat themselves. So Steve Langan is a great teacher, great poet. This is a poem for Steve Langan. I worked with Steve my master's thesis, and diplomatically, we had some arguments, which you should always do very respectfully, if at all, with your teachers, just so you know, and maybe not the way that I did. But I will say, I had a really valuable learning experience with him because he was willing to say, like, that's just not interesting to me. And I mean, really, like, you can't pay people to say, I mean, I did. I paid for the master's program. But you can't get people to just be really honest with you these days, so I feel like it's kind of priceless. So this is called Picture from the Diner. You walk past the diner on the corner where everyone looks the same, where your family even has the same pancakes. You recall a morning you waited for pancakes promised, and you remember what broke in the night to set an empty table. Everyone comes in the door with the same need, finds its name on a laminated menu, and a cook who could griddle orders in his sleep. You eat eggs the way your mother makes them, until you have to decide if you're capable of poaching. You'd have to watch time so closely, or know by sight how to retain such a tender shape. How much bright yellow streaming from heart can you stand? Should you ask for it the way you like? All right, I got a couple minutes. All right, let's see here. I changed my mind about what I had, so I'm gonna grab something here. All right. Okay, yeah, why not? Okay, so I'm gonna read. This poem is called "One Night Like This Writes the World," and I haven't really been keeping up on this part of my thread of my reading where I'm supposed to talk, you know. Kate Gale, who also teaches in master's program where I attended with some other folks in the room, said, if you're not gonna do something extra at a reading, don't get up and read your poems. And that was like terrifying, and so I'm always nervous still today, because I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? So I get up here and talk really quickly like this, and that's my something, I guess. So this is, yeah, One Night Like This Writes the World. Tonight we danced in the streets, and it was not a metaphor for triumph. We kissed in front of window-framed minglers. You bought me a rose from the besuited man who sells them in some worn but modernized ritual of barroom courtship. Today, the girl painted some copper onto my hair, and your rose was pink and bloomed into the night's mist-heavy air. Even the back wall of one bar bore paintings: cherry blossoms, gray skulls on a red field, sheep eating a man outside a bar, and a huge raven lying on its back, feet in the air as if struggling to right itself. We skipped up some church steps en route to where we parked the car. We cheered each other's jumps to slap fingertips against the dry cleaner's marquee. All right. I think I'm going to finish up with this one. So this is called Asking for Your Heart. I don't think you can, this wind is great because it's nice air conditioning, but I'm a little like, I have a binder clip here. I always have one, so I should have, whatever, I can't do it now. All right, so this is one of those poems where you start with the same word, and then you have to like think of a new image, you know, you have to get deeper into it. Guys, what's the name of it? I forget.
Cross stick?
Someone?
The cross stick?
I used to call it head rhyme.
Yeah, I don't know what head rhyme is. I like that. All right, so I mean, this is how poetry works, you guys. You're the future. I appreciate it. All right, so asking for your heart. Heart on the floor with a fork stuck through it. Heart like real thing organ, fleshy music box you speak but never see. Heart like the paper valentines in colors little girls are supposed to like. Heart stopped like ink stopped, but heartstopper like showstopper. Heart calling out, that's the best you got? Every time someone stopped, heart cold away. Your paper doll scissored hips flatlined. Paper heart you traced torn. Breath holding your yes behind your teeth. Heart, a peony too big for your mouth. Heart rush pollen ringing up all the bees. Heart you never bothered wanting. Stapled on heart glitter name tag you could have worn had they just asked. Instead, this heart shaking on the floor. Thank you. Trying to leave a clean reading space as one should for the next reader. Okay.
Thank you, Emily. That was fantastic. You did great. How's everybody else doing? Students, are you staying awake out there? Your eyes closed for more than 3 seconds. Your grade goes down later. Okay. Keep an eye. Eddie, keep an eye on them. Okay. Eddie's the one falling asleep. All right. Next we have Jeff Alessandrelli. Jeff and I go back a long 20 years now, Jeff? It's been a long time, man. Remember that trip to Aspen with that girl Katie in the Winnebago? God, that was awesome. Actually, that's where that previous story about the possum comes from. But actually, I don't know, Jeff. We just met today. But we've been corresponding, haven't we?
Yes, that's true.
But that could have happened, Jeff. It could have happened. I feel that connection. See, poets, we're just liars who tell the truth. Don't you guys know that? All right, I'm going to screw up your bio here. Recent work by Jeff appears or is forthcoming in Poetry Northwest, Boston Review, Denver Quarterly, Poetry Review, and many, many others. He's also the author of the full-length collection, This Last Time Will Be the First, Burnside Review 2014, and 5 chapbooks. And he has several books back there, so you should check them out. Jeff's next collection, Nothing of the Month Club, will be out in 2018. He's currently a staff blogger for the Kenyon Review as well. Additionally, Jeff co-edits the chapbook outfit. Oh God, what is it, Press? Help me out here. My basketball skills are not so good. Which recently put out works by some awesome people here. And vinyl records, did you bring any of those?
I did.
All right, so those dudes still got the record players. He's got some vinyl back there of is it just all, it's spoken word all?
Miles and Ray on the track.
Awesome.
Not me.
Okay, cool. But you put them out though, so that's awesome. All right, Jeff, 20 years I've known him. He's coming up here. Put your hands together.
Thank you, Chad. So like Chad said, my last name is really long. It's 13 letters. Alessandrelli. So it's easy to mess up. So these first poems are kind of alter ego poems. So my middle name is Robert, and when I go to a restaurant, I don't like to deal with my long last name, so I'll just say my last name's Roberts. So these are poems. They're called Jeffrey Roberts' Dreamcoats. Introducing Jeffrey Roberts. He believes that even if his parents had never been born, his grandparents never having met at the dance or dinner party or lake house retreat, he nevertheless still would have been born. it takes mere seconds to make a man. He claims to have found the fountain of youth using Google Maps. Where is Florida? Brussels? Understanding Jeffrey Roberts. A dream-thin child, a wounded animal that doesn't yet realize he's lost both sight and scent of the pack up ahead. His silly billy goat beard cleanly divorcing his face from his face. His brown eyes, his gangly limbs, his teeth and ratty brown sneakers, my most imaginary friend. The same Jeffrey Roberts that has been missing. I was born with 2 wings, one of them broken. By the end of our lives, our posture blames us for everything, everything. Up the lonely slices of the narrow streets we walk. Memory reminds me of a stupendous fire spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading and then suddenly ceasing, extinguished. Orgasms remind me of stupendous fires spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading and then suddenly ceasing, extinguished. From some basement on a hill, we all die equally. Long is life and beautiful. Thank you. So, does anyone know, he's been dead for over 50 years, but does anyone know the comedian Lenny Bruce? All right. Well, he was a comedian. We'll just leave it at that. He's not around. Actually, there's a Dustin Hoffman biography that came out in the late 70s where Dustin Hoffman plays Lenny Bruce. I would recommend it. The reason I'm saying that, there actually is a reason, is the title of this poem comes from a statement that Lenny Bruce said. So the title of this poem is a Lenny Bruce quote. Everyday people are straying away from the church and going back to God. Lenny Bruce. Bad pop songs make my throat hurt in the same way that old soul songs, Sam Cooke and Wilson Pickett, simultaneously lamenting and exalting in the very same note, remind me that I don't have a soul, that nobody has a soul. Hate can spell fate backwards, can spell attenuating, can spell bliss. Forever the smartest dumb guy in the room. Of his heroin abuse, Lenny Bruce said, I'll die young, but it's like kissing God. He once lost his voice singing at the wedding of a twice-removed cousin of his, one that he hardly even knew. How he wept and cried at the ceremony. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and install the flowers wrong, and later they're still shining and resonating